Now. Awesome. Welcome everyone to this presentation. If you attended these before, you've probably heard this spiel, but I have to go over it anyway. So just kind of a quick explanation of everything that's going on. Your camera and microphone will be off for this entire presentation. So if you have questions, make sure you submit them through the question and Q&A little button. Our presenter will go over the questions as you guys send them in or at the very end of the presentation. So if you need to communicate, make sure you're using that Q&A because like I said, your camera and microphone are off. Do be sure to sign up for more sessions to learn more about different universities as well as hot topics. And you can access all of these sessions at our website, www.iacac.org. Also, this recording will be available for you. So if you lose internet and have to pop out or anything that happens like that, don't worry, you'll still be able to access all this great information at a later date. It's also going to be on our website, so you will be good to go. Now that I did my spiel, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter so she can get started.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Sarah Erickson. I'm an assistant dean of admission at Reed College in the lovely Portland, Oregon. And I'm also a recent Reed grad. I went to Reed and graduated in 2019, so just last year. While I was a student, I studied environmental studies and political science. And today my goal is to share a little bit more about Reed with you, answer any questions that you have about Reed, all of that good stuff, share some of my experiences both as a current student and as an admission counselor now. With that in mind, please do feel free to send any questions my way using the Q&A feature. I'll be periodically stopping to answer questions, so no need to wait for those pauses, but that's when I'll kind of take a look and see what questions have come in. So again, feel free to send those at any time. I want to hear from you, hear what you're curious about hearing today. But without further ado, I can go ahead and get started. I really like to frame these discussions talking a little bit about where Reed is located, kind of grounding you to the physical space of campus and where we are at in Portland, in the Pacific Northwest, in the world. So, and what that means really for your experience as a student at Reed, right? So for me, one of the biggest kind of draws as I was looking at colleges and considering Reed was the fact that we are located in Portland and in the city proper. So we have all of those opportunities that come with being in Portland, being in a city. We're in one of Portland's southeast neighborhoods, which means within walking distance or biking distance to campus, you have tons of coffee shops where students will work at, really good food. Portland's known for our food trucks, and we definitely live up to that. Yeah, good food, coffee, tea shops, bookstores, record stores, thrift stores, really all of those good, fun things that you want to have access to as a college student, all within, like I said, walking or biking distance right from campus in our little neighborhood here in Portland. If you're hopping on a bus, Portland is super accessible to get around to all the various neighborhoods, get downtown if you have an internship opportunity or want to catch a concert that's coming through Portland, go to an art show, whatever it is that you like to do to kind of get out and have some fun, you have access to really easily within the city of Portland, and it's really easy to get around. That being said, Portland is also really nature forward, a lot of opportunities to get outside and kind of take in the advantages of nature. So Portland is riddled with parks and walking trails and dog parks. We're also just about 90 minutes away from the Oregon coast. We're about 60 minutes away from Mount Hood. So if you want to experience some snow or get out and go try your hand at skiing, or even just go up to Reed's ski cabin on Mount Hood to take in the atmosphere, drink some hot chocolate by the fire as you study. That's kind of how I spend that you took advantage of that space myself. But there's all these opportunities, no matter what it is you like to do. There's really something for everyone in the nearby vicinity in Portland. And even in the heart of campus, we have our lovely Reed Canyon that is right in the center of campus. It's essentially a really big lake that is home to a lot of fauna and flora, and it's a really nice getaway if you have 30 minutes between classes and you want to feel like you're kind of in a completely new place. You can go down and take a little walk around the canyon, and in 30 minutes you can then be in your class, in your next class. So it's really nice to have that kind of ability to navigate both the urban city life in Portland and around campus while still feeling like you can get outside and enjoy the nature that makes up Portland and Reed. We have over 100 species of trees on campus. Definitely, if you want to learn more about our trees and nature on campus, I recommend read.edu/trees. It's a really fun interactive map of our trees on campus. All right. So now hopefully you have a better sense of kind of where Reed lives, where we're located within Portland, within the Pacific Northwest, and what that means in terms of getting out, getting off campus, taking advantage of those opportunities and resources right in our backyard. All right. But kind of coming back to campus again, I want to switch gears, talk a little bit more about the academic experience, classroom experience, what you can expect the student experience to be like at Reed. Reed is a liberal arts college, and really we're a college of liberal arts and sciences because you're going to have the ability to really explore and integrate your many interests by learning across a really wide spectrum of different subjects. That's the heart of a liberal arts education, right? In the definition of it, liberal meaning wide-ranging or free, arts meaning disciplines or subjects. So we take that really seriously, and in your education, we're going to allow you and have you take classes across a wide range of different subjects and have that freedom to explore and integrate different interests that you have. And so the way that works, how that looks like for your curriculum at Reed are we call distribution requirements. And your distribution requirements are going to be what allows you to have that exploration and integration of different subjects. And essentially, distribution requirements ask each student to take a few classes in 3 key areas, 3 different categories. You take classes in your first category, which is your arts and humanities. So those are going to be your performing arts, music, theater, dance, your visual arts and art history, your languages, literature, philosophy, religion. Those all fall within your arts and humanities. Your second category of classes are going to be your history and social sciences, so political science, economics, sociology, anthropology, history. And then finally, your third category is going to be your natural, mathematical, and psychological sciences. In other words, your psychology, neuroscience, biology, chemistry, even math, physics, and computer science. And within each of those 3 categories, you have the ability and the freedom to choose the classes that you're taking, really make your schedule unique to your interests and what you care about. So you could be a biology major at Reed and have a completely different class schedule to other biology students because you're taking classes that you care about. And in those classes, you're going to recognize pretty early on that the classroom is really made up of strong and important interactions between your fellow students and the faculty, so your professors. So really intimate classroom sizes where you're getting to know everybody by name. In fact, our faculty, our professors all go by their first names. Even our administrators, the president of the college goes by her first name, Audrey. And this really creates, it really kind of dilutes the kind of separation between faculty and students, and it allows for you to really consider your education as one where you're learning alongside your peers and even your professors, and you're creating new knowledge and having a really hands-on, interactive, engaged education experience as well. So what that means is we have classes that are about 15 or less students. Um, we have 1,400 students overall at Reed, all undergraduate students, and they're all learning in these small classroom sizes. Often we have discussion-based classrooms where you're going to be sitting around a a circle, or all your desks are facing inwards to each other, and you're going to have the opportunity to discuss with your peers and bring your own ideas to the table, learn from your peers, have a really interactive learning experience in almost all of your classes at Reed. And you're not really expected to be confident and ready to take on these discussion-based classes, even kind of leading conference at times. You're going to have the support from Reed to work your way up to that point and practice those skills along the way. And one of the most foundational classes that every student at Reed takes is a class called Humanities 110, or Hum 110. And this is a class, again, every first year student will take, that is going to help you build those skills up by learning alongside your fellow first year students, practicing these discussion based learning environments, while still learning about the humanities. So reading ancient texts, looking at art and architecture, and answering some intellectual curious questions like what it means to be human, and things along those lines. Pretty philosophical, but you have the ability to practice those skills of an engaged learner, so that later on in your time at Reed, you are already familiar with that learning style, and you've built those skills up really well. All right. So from Humanities 110 into your distribution requirements, at Reed, you declare your major at the end of your sophomore year, and you don't do so beforehand. So you have a lot of time to explore and, try out your different interests, figure out what it is you want to, officially major in. In a Reed, it's almost encouraged, if it's definitely supported, to come in, on undeclared, not knowing specifically what your major is going to look like. It's also normal for Reedies to come in thinking they're going to major in one thing and then completely 180ing and changing their mind and majoring in something else along once you're a sophomore. That's totally fine, encouraged, and totally normal at a school like Reed. And once you do declare your major by the end of your sophomore year, you will then really become an expert in that field, taking really advanced classes and learning in more advanced ways, learning about the particular research methods that are common in your field, practicing those skills by doing research outside of the traditional classroom with your professor. These opportunities are going to be there for you as undergrads because, again, Reed doesn't have graduate level education. So our faculty, our professors are really focused on the undergraduate experience, and those opportunities for research are open to you as undergraduates. And that definitely goes for your STEM classes, working in the research labs, but that's also going to be available for you if you're into classics or languages or your history and social sciences as well. You're going to have those opportunities across the board to work on projects and even in research firsthand in your field. And then by the time, you're a junior, you've really sort of honed in on your major, becoming a true expert in your field. And by the time you're a senior, you're so ready to take on the next big step of your Reed education, and that's going to be your senior thesis. This is a requirement to graduate of all Reed students. There's no particular program or group of students who thesis. This is something every single Reed student will do once they're a senior. And the senior thesis, it's essentially an independent project that you're taking on, that you spend a whole year working on over the course of your last year at Reed. And senior thesis is, again, an independently driven project. This is something that you're passionate about, that you are curious about and want to produce new knowledge on and put your stamp on. And so with that in mind, thesis is going to look completely different for every single Reed student. It can be, spending time in the library, in the archives, reading and researching, maybe following research methods, answering a question that you've proposed at the beginning of the year, and really writing a really long paper. That could be your thesis. It could also look like spending long days in the research lab, running experiments over and over again, and writing up your methods and results, and kind of discussing what your experiment that you've been working on in the lab means for your research and for future research. It could also look like creative, something a bit more creative in terms of creative writing portfolio. It could be a series of short stories or poetry. I've also known seniors to write a musical for their thesis. Again, the projects that you take on for your thesis are up to you, and a way for you to follow your passions academically, and really kind of tailor your education experience your senior year to something that really interests you. And this is just really good practice and experience for when you go on to take on those next steps, whether that's grad school or you jumping right into your career. The senior thesis and really your whole time at Reed is going to really prepare you to take on those next steps. All right, I'm going to pause. Reminder to ask any questions that you may have in the Q&A. I'm happy to answer those during our session today. But before we move on, I just want to pause and see if any questions come in. All right. No questions so far. That's all right. Send them my way if you have them. Otherwise, you can get in touch with us at any time later on, and we're happy to connect you and with someone at Reed and answer any questions that may come up later on. But to move on a little bit, I want to talk about grading at Reed. Grading is something I often get questions about because people often hear that at Reed we don't have grades, or that our grading system is kind of weird. True, it may be a little bit weird, but I have grown to really appreciate the way that grades are handled at Reed, what that process is like. And before I get going on grades, I do want to say, yes, we have grades. You will have a GPA and a transcript that you can produce and send to, your employer or your grad school or whatever the case may be. You will have that transcript that is really useful for whatever it is that comes next. That being said, Reed does think about grading a little bit differently at Reed. And the difference at Reed and many other schools is that we don't automatically show you as a student what your grade is on an assignment or in a class. In other words, you may submit a 5-page paper And instead of getting an A or a B or some number at the top of your paper, that's so easy to look at and kind of discard. If you're doing really well, you probably don't care too much about changing or evolving or improving it at any point. But instead of getting those numbers or letters on the top of your assignments, you may turn in that 5-page paper and get 7 pages back. 2 pages are your professor's handwritten notes, exchanging conversation, really engaging with your writing, giving you feedback on your writing, helping you understand what you're doing really well, maybe share some tips on what you could try for next time to improve, or even to just challenge yourself in a new way to try something new. And so this allows you to take the pressure out of that number or letter and really just focus all the time on how to get better, how to challenge yourself in new ways and improve as a scholar. And I mean, that's really what learning is all about, right? You can be doing really well in a class, but you still can work on new things and work on getting better in some, even just little ways. And so your education at Reed is going to encourage you to do that. This also allows for a really collaborative education experience amongst students. It's really easy for rigorous, challenging schools like Reed to become a really competitive scene where, students are fighting for the top grade in the class, but you're not going to have that competition at Reed because, well, you don't know who has the top grade in the class. Instead, you have feedback and ways to get better. And so you have this really collaborative environment where students just want to help each other succeed and challenge themselves in new ways. And that really kind of comes back to that grading system. But with all that in mind, you're never going to be, thrown and left out to the wolves. You're going to know pretty well how you're doing in your classes based on that feedback you're given. And you're going to have that support from your professors at all times. So you're never going to be in the dark about how you're doing in a class. All right. So this idea of a collaborative community that I think really stems from that grading system that so totally extends out into the broader community outside of the classroom. We have a saying here that Reedies take care of Reedies, and that is just so true, and something that I think you'll see as you spend more time here. Every single day you'll see an act of kindness amongst Reed students, and it just really just showcases that Reed students, are going to lift each other's voices up and take into account each other's perspectives and experiences, and help create the best possible community on campus that's really guided by honor and inclusivity. And these are two things that you'll see, like I said, if you spend any time at all here on campus, you'll really see it take place in small ways and big ways every single day. And this kind of all comes back to the honor principle. The honor principle is, I like to think of it as a type of guiding ethos for campus community that really helps solidify our community growth. So that's what I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit about honor and what that means for our community here in just a second. All right. Honor. The honor principle. You're not going to find a specific definition about honor or what it means for the community, because it's an intentionally undefined concept that's constantly evolving creatively over time as new community members come to Reed with new ideas and perspectives on how to apply this broad concept of honor to their actions. Essentially, though, the honor principle just asks each member of the community to reflect on how every action that they're taking impacts the rest of the community, impacts other individuals, other physical spaces on campus, and whether or not in that moment are they acting honorably in however they define honor for themselves. You know, again, you ask 10 students at Reed, 10 community members at Reed what honor, how they define honor, and you're going to get 10 different answers. For me, though, the honor principle and honor, it essentially asks that you not only think about how, whether or not, you're acting in a way, you're treating others the way you want to be treated, but kind of flip that and think about, are you treating others the way they want to be treated? Really thinking about others' lived experiences and reflecting on how your intentions don't always reflect your impacts on others. And so that's how I like to think about honor and the actions that we have on our community and on others in our spaces. So that's honor. And because of the honor principle, students have a ton of autonomy and chances to make a difference in our community. Reed has one of the most active student governments on campus, and that does not surprise me one bit, because Reedies really take a lot of care and pride in making the best community possible and having a voice as students in creating the best possible campus community. And so they have, a lot of say in student government, and that really extends out into other facets as well. So, students have a lot of say in the policies that govern campus. Students have a lot of say in, policies and administrative decisions, things like that. And students, voices are lifted up at really every level. Students have some chances to decide how student funding, is allocated for clubs and organizations. And so we see a lot of organizations and events and clubs that center, social justice and equity, and providing spaces for identity-based groups, and groups that give back to the community in some way. So our sustainability club is a really popular one, for example. But we also have a lot of opportunities for inclusive spaces within our community for having fun, club sports, rugby and ultimate frisbee are some of the more popular ones, but there's also our aerial acrobatics troupe, fire spinning group, and much more ways to get involved in clubs and organizations on campus. And at every step of the way, those student groups are run by students, funding is allocated by students, and events are put on by students. So the community that you see at Reed, students have put their heart and soul into building that. All right. So that is the Reed community in a few words. Please do send any questions that you have my way. If you have any about Reed community, academics at Reed. One of my favorite traditions that we have on campus at Reed, one way to kind of get involved with your fellow community members, is our Week of Paideia. Paideia is this week-long event that's essentially a celebration of learning and sharing ideas and knowledge with your peers, with your community, outside of that traditional classroom, outside of your history texts and science books and all of that stuff. You have a chance to share ideas and knowledge with your community in other ways as well. So we have this week-long event that's dedicated to this love of learning at Reed, where anybody in the community, students, staff, faculty, even alumni, can come to Reed and teach a class on any subject. And they spend a week teaching one or several classes and having the community engage with that class and pick up a new skill or try something new. or really just kind of celebrate this love of learning that we have on campus. I myself never taught a class as a student, but I've gone to many classes. I've been to things like candle making, soap making class. One of my favorites was a class on how to temper chocolates, where we made our own truffles. It was delicious, but also it made it really helpful and informational. But classes can be on really anything that you want it to be. It could be an informational session on how to be a dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons. It's really kind of fun to see what our community comes up with from year to year in terms of learning and engaging with others at Reed. It's just a really fun way for the community to come together. It's one of my favorite, like I said, traditions that we have on campus. All right. Well, with that in mind, and in terms of timing, I want to be sure to talk a little bit about the application process, financial aid, and what to expect in that process at Reed. Please do send any questions my way that you have about academics or clubs or student life or anything that you want to hear more about before the end of the session, so I can be sure to answer those. All right. So, applying to Reed. A few things to keep in mind for the application process at Reed. One, there's never any fee to apply to Reed. So just makes it even more, even easier to do so via the Common App or the Coalition application. Either application is accepted at Reed. We have no preference for one or the other. It's totally up to you. Common App and Coalition App don't have a ton of differences. The key difference being the personal essay in the Common application versus the locker item in the Coalition application. But again, we can definitely guide you and help you through the process in either of those applications. And in either one, there's never going to be an application fee. Another key thing to keep in mind about our application this year, for the next 2 years, we're going to be practicing test blind admission, which means we're not going to be using the ACT or SAT tests in any part of the application review process. The idea behind going test blind is to just make sure that everybody is on an equal playing ground, an equal field, where we know that testing and test prep and all of that stuff is just not equitably or equally accessible around the world. So right now, especially, so for the next 2 years at least, we're going to be practicing test blind admission. In addition to that, we do ask for a few key things for your application, your transcript, so your grades. We're going to ask for your application essay, your teacher recommendations, and all of that goes into understanding who you are, painting the best picture of you through all of these components of the application. We're also going to ask a supplemental essay question, and the essay question that we ask, I love the question. I think it's really fun. It's a fun way to kind of get to know you as applicants, get to know your interests and your passions and what type of community that you look for. The question that we ask for your supplemental essay is, if you had a chance to teach a Paideia class in that week of Paideia that I was talking about, what class would you teach to your peers and to your community? What would you hope that class would bring to your community? And again, this can be on anything that you want it to be, anything that you are excited to share with your community and something that you're interested in. By no means do you have to be an expert in whatever it is that you want to teach. A lot of the fun of learning or teaching a class is that act of learning as well, and having the opportunity to build those new experiences. So we encourage you to write about anything that comes to mind in terms of something that you care so much about that you would want to teach it to your peers? So I love that question. I think it does a really nice job of showing us kind of how you think creatively about the world around you, what your interests are, and what kind of community that you want to build. All right. And just to reiterate, by no means is that supplemental essay kind of outweighing other aspects of your application. In fact, there's no part of the application that is going to have more weight in our decision-making process than another aspect of it. We really do read every single page of your application because we know you put a lot of time and effort into every aspect of it. And in terms of financial aid at Reed, I won't go into too much detail about our financial aid. If you do have questions that are specific to you or your family, we encourage you to reach out to our financial aid office directly, get in touch with your admission counselor who can connect you with them, or reach out to them in some way and get those questions answered. But to give you an overview of how financial aid works, though, at Reed, is that Reed offers need-based aid. This is different than merit-based aid in that it's not based on your grades or any academic merit. Instead, it's based on your family's financial need. And with that, we meet 100% of every admitted student's demonstrated financial need. We do this because we believe education should be equitable for all. Same reasons why we're doing test blind admission. We have practiced giving need-based aid based on a family's demonstrated need because we believe, if we gave merit-based aid, it could be possible that many students get a little bit of aid. And in this way, we can ensure that those who are getting the aid that they need are doing so, and to be able to achieve that education. All right. So with that is what I have for you. I want to ensure that any questions you have are answered. So I haven't received any yet, but this is a reminder. You can send those over in your the Q&A, and I can answer them now. It looks like we have about 8 more minutes in our session, so send them over now. Otherwise, I can share a little bit more about Reed. Let's see. So while we wait for any questions to come in before the end of our session, I would be happy to talk a little bit about dorm life on campus. I know I get some questions sometimes about living on campus and the opportunity to do so. So I feel like I can share that information with you. Hopefully it'll be helpful. Reed is a really residential style campus community. We have a capacity to house about 85% of the student body on campus in any given year. That being said, not quite 85% of the student body decides to live on campus every year. So really, if you want to live on campus all 4 years even of your time at Reed, you can have the ability to and chance to do so. But how housing works at Reed, students are guaranteed housing for their first 2 years. So your first and second year, if you want to live on campus, you have the guaranteed room to do so. That being said, you don't have to live on campus any given year. I certainly recommend it at least 1 year. It's a great way to make friends, build community. Your dorm mates are going to put on movie nights and pizza nights. My dorm would get ice cream like every weekend together, and it's just a really great way to build community in your dorm, in your living situation. And it's also just a way to meet people that maybe you're not meeting in your classes because you have just wildly different interests, and that's okay. It's a great way to build that community. You also have a lot of say on campus in terms of your housing and your the have policies in your dorm community. You'll basically get together at the beginning of the year and go over all of those community norms. So what your quiet hours are, you know, what is what is the way you're specifying your own food in the fridge so your ice cream doesn't get stolen, all that good stuff. You will decide and go over as a community at the beginning of the year. Um, Also, if you're living on campus, you will automatically sign up for a board plan. So, or sorry, yeah, a board plan where you can have access to eating on campus in our dining hall. You basically have three different levels of board points that you can use. You have your high one where you're probably eating every single meal on campus, including snacks, down to your lowest meal plan, which means that you're probably eating maybe 1 or 2 meals a day on campus and supplementing that with your own cooking, or going out or whatever it is that you do. So you have some flexibility in your board plan, and the number of points that you have. If you are living off campus, though, you can opt into a board plan or sign up for board points just on your own. So absolutely, you can still eat on campus and have access to that. It's just really easy to do so as you're living on campus as well. In terms of food on campus, it's really I honestly thought it was really good food. I still eat there as a staff member in the dining hall on campus. There's new options every single day, and as a vegetarian, I never got bored eating on campus. The food is honestly super good, and there's both kind of the more home cooked meals that are on a rotation that you kind of get a lot of variety and try new things. But there's also like a grab and go station if you have more limited time to eat. We also have a number of coffee shops on campus. So if you're just looking for a pastry or a cup of coffee, you have access to that around campus as well. Those are all student run as well. All right. So I don't have any questions so far. Let me know in the chat if there's anything, even if it's not a question, if you just want to hear more about XYZ at Reed, let me know. But we only have a few more moments or a few more minutes. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank all of you for coming and joining me to learn more about Reed. Hopefully you walked away learning one cool thing about our community, our educational experience. If you want to hear more, we are offering virtual sessions every single day. You can go on a virtual campus tour or learn more about us in a workshop, or even just an information session. Or if you want an individual meeting with a counselor, either admission counselor, financial aid counselor, or even a current student to get that different perspective from a student at Reed, you can absolutely do so through our website. So I hope you get in touch with us soon. Thanks so much for joining me today. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen one last time as a quick wrap up for everyone. So thank you all for attending this session. If you do have any questions, you'll be able to get in contact with Reed College. But just so you know what happens after this, so there will be a quick survey. It'll be 4 questions, and we ask that you complete those so that way we know how to improve for more sessions after this. Definitely sign up for more sessions. You can do that through www.iacac.org. And this recording will be available. So if you had your internet glitch and you had to pop out and come back in, you'll be able to access all this wonderful information. So thank you everyone for joining. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and this will end pretty abruptly. So bye everyone.